It's a rich man's world. Quintessential Finance on the Quintessential Show.
Money in the bank.
Whether it's a foreign concept to you or you're one of those in the know, it is more than likely that you have heard the word Bitcoin before. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency that started in 2009 that has reached record highs in 2017. It recently reached $1,800 for one Bitcoin. It was trading higher than gold at some point. But what does this mean to investors? And more importantly, what does this mean for you? But first, let's take a couple steps back and see Bitcoin for what it really is.
A lot of things over time have become digital, right? Like when I was a kid, I'm not sure about you, but when I was a kid, like we didn't have digital photos, but it was like physical photos. But over time, these evolved, and you've got digital images. It was basically the only way that you will send photos around. Or you had physical tapes or CDs or LPs, and then over time, it became MP3s or other streaming media. The same for video, the same for text, the same for everything else. Now, the only thing really that never became digital in the same way was money.
That is the voice of Werner van Rooyen. He's the head of growth at a company that allows the purchasing of Bitcoins via an exchange, and it is available to you and I.
Now, surely a lot of money became digital, and you'll have online banking, but the problem with that always was that there was always the requirement for a central trusted party, because with, let's say, music or photos, it's very easy to copy and paste, right? It's easy to duplicate the digital asset that you have. So if you're going to have digital money, people would be able to basically copy and paste it, and that makes it by definition worthless because it's not scarce. So what Bitcoin is solving is it's the first time in our existence that there's a technology that allows us to transfer something of digital value, a digital token, without the need for a central party. And that's it sounds very weird. It sounds a little esoteric. Like, okay, what's the purpose of sending money without a central party? But it is very, very powerful, because the idea of one central party not issuing and not controlling and not restricting the use of your money, it's a very, very, very important, very powerful thing.
This week on Quintessential Finance, we talk Bitcoin, the new kid on the block. The company Werner worked for was formerly known as BitX. After a couple of cash injections from key investors, including Naspers, BitX changed its name to Luno. Luno is ready to be the bank of the future. The main traded currency, Bitcoin. We pick up our conversation with Werner from why Luno changed its name from BitX to Luno.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think from a branding perspective, there's some good reasons to do it. I think when you are essentially creating what is becoming a bank of the future, you don't want it to be seen as like a technical exchange. You want to see it more as, a consumer-facing, friendly bank of the future. But the name Luno has, I think, a beautiful metaphor in Bitcoin. Some early Bitcoin adopters might know this, and the phrase that you'll sometimes encounter where we say like to the moon, and it's just like this, this like unfettered enthusiasm for where the Bitcoin price is going, and this thing became a bit of a catchphrase for Bitcoin and maybe Dogecoin too. It's just like to the moon, but the word Luno actually means in Slovenian and Esperanto, it means moon. And I think it's a beautiful metaphor for if you are creating, or if not directly creating, but you're involved with and you facilitate the transfer of a currency that has no border, what is the one thing that everybody from anywhere in the world sees, at night when they look up, and it's the moon. And I think it is actually a very powerful metaphor for something that kind of belongs to everybody, belongs to nobody, and like everybody has access to it in some way.
So let's find out how it all works. And let's figure out if adding Bitcoin to our investment portfolio is worth it. So how is Luno different to a bank, for example? And is this an improvement on the banking system?
The problem is that banks are very important, and I think they have their place in society, but they're not very fast-moving industries. Banks could, from day one, create mobile apps when, the Play Store or the App Store came around. They could develop apps, but they didn't. It takes them a long time to get on board. So we moved away from the let's build products for banks model to let's build a bank. Let's create a platform where people can interact with digital currency. So what Luno does is we're a place where consumers can go. They sign up with us. We need an email address and a secure password, and then from there the customer can make a deposit of their home currency and use that currency to buy Bitcoin, and then they have Bitcoin. And within our suite of products, they can use the Luno wallet, for instance, to pay for their Bitcoin products using our wallet, or track the progress over time of like how the value goes up or goes down, pegged in their local currency. And should the day come that they want to maybe sell their Bitcoin, they can do so again through us. And we operate, so initially we were the first, and we're still the largest, but we were the first Bitcoin exchange in Africa. But we've since expanded greatly. So at the moment we're in South Africa and in Nigeria, in Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And we've got a handful of countries in the sideline to which we'll be probably be moving into in due time. But Luno's purpose is to help people learn more about what Bitcoin is and to interact with it, how to buy, how to sell, how to get hands onto this new technology.
So you give me a Bitcoin wallet. Is that Bitcoin wallet mine forever, or do you own the Bitcoin wallet? What happens if I now buy Bitcoin with my South African rands? I now have a Bitcoin balance. And what happens if you, let's say hypothetically, disappear after 20 to 30 years? Where do my Bitcoins go then?
That is a great question. I think it's something that not enough people are asking. So Bitcoin, again, is just a digital token, or it's digital money. And wherever that money lies, it could be vulnerable, right? So consumers have a few options. Some people prefer to store their Bitcoin themselves. And this is the equivalent of, let's say, creating a document on your computer and writing, let's say you write a book, and you write that book and it's only kept on your computer. That's great because you have a lot of control over it. But the bad thing is if that laptop gets stolen, or the hard, you lose it, you leave it in an Uber, or the hard drive crashes, that book, that digital asset that you had on it is lost forever. Now, the model that Luno takes is closer to a cloud model, kind of to what you would imagine something like Gmail would be. With Gmail, you want to access your email, but it's stored behind a username and a password. If you, the unique user, knows the username and password, you can get access to your emails. And the same way, if you have a book and you've maybe loaded to Dropbox, person with your Dropbox username and password would be able to download that document. So with Luno, however, we store the Bitcoin on behalf of our customers. That doesn't mean that we restrict the use of their Bitcoin. So even if you are the person who says, okay, I don't trust you, or I don't really know who you guys are, or I want to keep my Bitcoin on my laptop, you can do so. You can buy it from us and then move it to your own wallet. But the Luno wallet works on a cloud model. So we store the Bitcoin on behalf of our customers. So this is the thing that we spend most of our time and effort on, is keeping customers' Bitcoin safe. So we do a multitude of things, and actually the Bitcoin that you might interact with and pay other people with there's only a small fraction of the reserves that we hold that is online. That is what you call in Bitcoin parlance in like a hot wallet that gets sent immediately. The majority of Bitcoin that we actually keep in reserve, and it's not even connected to the internet, with multiple backups in multiple vaults in multiple locations around the world.
The whole thing about 2017 right now is that Bitcoin is kind of coming into the lens again and coming into focus, because I mean it's now for some weird reason in 2017 a big year for Bitcoin, and it's been one of the biggest years for Bitcoin. I mean, I was actually looking at some stats yesterday on CNBC, and they were saying the price of Bitcoin has risen 81% since the beginning of 2017. We're having this conversation about a day after it hits $1,800 for one Bitcoin. So is this something we should be considering? Because now suddenly it's skyrocketing. Are we too late to get into the Bitcoin game?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question that's probably one of the questions that I get asked most often is like, is it too late? Is now a good time? I think there's a few things. Like I've had this question asked by new adopters and new people for the past however many years, the past 4 or 5 years. And every time I also feel like, oh no, now the price can't go any higher. It's and then something ends up happening again. But I would say from somebody who, like, at least personally speaking, people should not get carried away, right? Like one of the best things to do in terms of, or it could be argued that one of the best things to do in terms of personal finance is to just do what is called dollar cost averaging. Like don't take all your money and go and take out loans to buy any speculative investment or established investment and put all of your money into that. Rather, just go over time. Just say, okay, every month I'm going to take a 0.5% of what I can, or 1% or 5% of what I want to invest, and I'll put it in Bitcoin and start building your pocket over time. That's a far better way than to say like, oh, okay, I'm going to drop a whole month's salary into it, and because the price could very well go down, and then you might do what we call a panic sell. So I would say the best thing is just have a good rhythm every week or every 2 weeks or every month, or just set up a schedule and buy the same amount over and over again. But it's also something that's very difficult because we can't give, and I don't want to give investment advice. But I think at least the triggers that we are seeing, or the interest that we are seeing from established retail investors coming to us, is that everybody wants it to be part of their portfolio. Now, people's appetite for risk will probably determine what percentage of your portfolio it should be. But I'm a firm believer that it should form part of everybody's portfolio, and people should just decide what percentage they're comfortable with.
Yeah, well, look, if I can put it to you this way, I mean, there's new websites popping up for people who are interested in investment, and one of the things, and these are forums, not just advice websites in inverted commas, because I mean we don't want to give advice, we just want to see what is available in terms of options. Even those websites eventually have to add a cryptocurrency category to their website, because that's where the conversation is going. But I mean, then you have guys like Warren Buffett, I mean, the best and the most successful investor of all time, saying stay away, it's all a mirage when compared to true investing, value investing and all of that. So that's my actual question. My question is, is it purely for beer money, or can this turn into something? And I mean, it's turned into something valuable for guys who have done it in the industry already. But my one question is, do you believe that this is going to go to $4,000? Because if it is, then I think it will be a lucrative investment.
Sure. I think we can maybe unpack some of the statements there. And I mean, I'm a huge fan of Warren Buffett, and something more important that he has said is to not invest in something that you don't understand. And I think a lot of really respected investors are staying away from Bitcoin because they don't understand it. And that is the right thing to do. So I would encourage anybody to learn as much about it as you can. Because the more you learn about it, the more like these layers come off, and you understand how you're like really entering a new understanding of how money operates. Like Bill Gates, initially, when he first heard about Bitcoin, he's like, oh, this is a fad. It's not worth your time. And a few people said, like, hold on, let's probably have this conversation. And now Bill Gates is a huge Bitcoin fan, and he's called it as something that is, quote, better than currency. So, but maybe the other thing that we can unpack there is exactly what Bitcoin is and what it's intended to do. So on the one hand, you can see it as a hedge, as an alternative asset class, something you can invest in, because let's say your country's currency is going down against the dollar, and there's indicators that Bitcoin might be a good place to park your cash. That's the one definition. The other definition is like Bitcoin, the technology, like what's the use of this? What can I do with this? And the technology right now allows you to send money fairly quick, fairly frictionless, fairly cheaply anywhere in the world without the need for a central party, which is an incredibly powerful thing. So what makes Bitcoin kind of unique, if you want to look at it as an investment, is if you buy Bitcoin, you kind of buy into the technology that underlies it. Like you're making Bitcoin more valuable. So it's almost like if the internet had like a money protocol, and you could by signing up and becoming an internet user, you make the internet a little bit more valuable. Bitcoin is purely like a payments protocol. So the idea is that Bitcoin, the Bitcoin may go up in value, it may not, but the technology that underpins Bitcoin, like we have yet to see all of the things that it can unlock, like all of the things that will be able to be built on Bitcoin. And by that measurement, I'm very, very optimistic. I think, and again, like internet's a very good way to compare it to, but I think, and a lot of people draw this comparison, they say Bitcoin right now is where the internet was at its early days. Like there's a lot of misunderstanding. People don't really know what it can do or what it is. They might read about it here or there, or somebody mentioned it on TV. But let's say 20 years ago, we had no idea all the cool things that could be built on an open technology such as the internet. And that's where we are right now with Bitcoin. It's like, oh, it's pretty cool, it's interesting, but I think all of the things that will still be unlocked, we just don't know what they are.
We have a cap of 21 million Bitcoin, and doesn't that mean that it's more like gold than it is money? And at some point, the poorest of the poor, especially in a country like South Africa, will never have access to a Bitcoin ever. But I mean, isn't there a big opportunity for the people in South Africa as smartphone technology starts to get even more inexpensive for people in this country to get Bitcoins and use them?
Sure. I think it's a very, very cool, good comparison that you have there. And you'll often encounter this in literature, and it's a good way to understand Bitcoin is to think of it as gold, but think of it as a digital form of gold. So gold is something that we as society have decided to give value to. I mean, it has some inherent value, right? You can use it in, to electricity, and it looks pretty. But the value that we gave it is purely we as a society has decided this is a resource that we have, and it's a resource that is scarce. It's limited in its supply, so it can't be manipulated. It's not issued by a company that controls it. It's all around the world, and there's one day there'll be no more gold that we can pull out of the ground. So we give it a value, and we generally over time see that this is a hedge against currency depreciation, or it's a hedge against inflation. And Bitcoin can be seen very much in the same way. It's a digital form or it's digital gold. There's a really good book called Digital Gold by Nathaniel Popper that's worth reading. Whether it's not accessible on a long enough timeline to other people, I would contest though. I think right now it's early days in Bitcoin, and there's a little bit of a gold rush, and some people will make money off the gold of Bitcoin. Some people will make money off the shovels and picks, building Bitcoin companies or Bitcoin wallet apps, or integrating it into their business, or becoming consultants, or miners, or creating new cryptocurrencies, or building applications. It's not just with Bitcoin, but Bitcoin being digital is infinitely divisible. So right now we talk about one Bitcoin is $1,800, or let me just check. Yeah, it was like today I think it went to 27,000 or 28,000 rand in South Africa. So that's the value of one Bitcoin. But it has decimals. You can send 0.000001 Bitcoin to somebody. You can send a fraction of a South African cent to someone in Bitcoin. So maybe we will just start using a smaller denominator and just say like, oh, we measure it now in decimals or in satoshis, like a smaller fraction of Bitcoin, because it is infinitely divisible.
So what do you think? Personally, I think Bitcoin is something exciting to think about and something that has potential for great returns in our investment portfolios. But it also seems to represent more than that. It seems to represent something that could change the game in terms of how we bank and how we save money and how we transfer money around the world. And that's why Bitcoin is the new kid on the block.
If you start at the beginning of money, of how we collectively as a society say, this is what we deem as valuable, so let's use this as a means of exchange and let's use this as a storage of wealth. Over time, it became coins and maybe gold and maybe paper that is backed by coins and gold, and then it became issued by central governments, and that became digital money like online banking. And if you really think about it, we're merely at the next step of what money is becoming. Where it's going to end up remains to be seen. But I definitely, if not Bitcoin, it's going to be something like Bitcoin.